Metroidvania games are some of my favorite. Masterful games like Hollow Knight, Blasphemous, or of course, Metroid. Games that I pick up and I instantly want to 100% all of it. A great Metroidvania makes you want to explore as much as possible and see everything the game has to offer. And there is one game I've had my eye on since the Steam Next Fest that looked like a combination of inspiration from Hollow Knight, Ori, and Okami, and it's Burr Path of the Teal Lotus. This game was developed by Squid Shock Games, who don't have any other games developed, but it was also published by Humble Games, who have too many games to count. But it's actually just 41 games. I counted. They published 41 games, not counting soundtracks. But anyways, Burr was released July 17th of 2024, and really, let's see if this game lived up to the high expectations that I had for it. We can start with the story of this game. You play as a fox Tentayana named Burr, who descended from the heavens to fulfill a prophecy. Some lore in this game tells you that each Tentayana has their own destiny to fulfill, so to speak, and early in this game you get an idea of what you need to do as you see a giant skeleton named Gasha Dokoru destroying a village. Through this game you engage with a lot of NPCs who don't have a lot of dialogue and don't serve much of a purpose honestly, but also have a handful of NPCs who give you tons of side quests and missions to do. The main story with fulfilling your prophecy isn't bad. The side quests you do on the other hand are a mix of challenging, puzzling, or just simply collecting. There's a good amount of variety with the limited side quests you have, and the rewards you get will enhance your play. We'll talk about that in the collectibles section. But for the story, it was okay. I don't really want to spoil the entire story. There isn't really much else to say about it, so I guess that's all for the story. But the biggest meat on this bone of a game has to be the combat and movement. This is where it truly shines for me. Like a true Metroidvania, you gain abilities as you progress the story. It starts simple with a jump and an attack, but early on you can learn how fluid the combat can be if you're able to hit enemies in midair. Hitting them in midair allows you to jump again and therefore get another attack off. This simple mechanic can make combat feel incredibly fluid to me, and at times you feel overpowered. Later in the game, you get all your usual mechanics that you'd expect with a ground pound, a dash, wall climbing, and even flying. They all open up new areas of the game for you to go to, but what's important is how these mechanics get implemented with bosses as well in the game. Most enemies are pretty simple and you don't need to do much to kill them. They die in a few hits. But the boss fights is where you'll be put to the test with your newly acquired abilities. Before this game, I played another Metroidvania called Gestalt Steam and Cinder. I thought it was a tremendous game, but the boss fights were very easy. Now in Burr, the boss fights aren't super hard, but you could find yourself dying a handful of times as most bosses have multiple phases and dying will just reset the entire fight. I view the bosses to be a huge plus in this game, especially with how easy it is to regain health. Hidden enemies will fill up your T meter, and for 5 T points you could call it, you can heal 1 HP. I will say a lot of bosses can make it hard to find the optimal time to heal, but the HP regeneration system with T on top of the challenging bosses to test you on mastering the abilities the game gives you makes the combat and movement my favorite part of the game. While the movement throughout the entire game is great and feels fluid with double jumping, wall climbing, flying, or dashing, there's another part of this game that has moments of greatness, but also feels a little bit dull at times, and that's all the collectibles that the game has to offer. One thing every Metroidvania game seems to have nowadays is a cute animal-esque creature for you to save. Except Blasphemous 2, you save flying babies. But Burr is no different. Throughout the game, you can save these turnip-looking creatures called Kodamas, and the reward for saving them is in Sakura City, which can be the hub area of the game. In Sakura City, they have an NPC we call the Architect, and throughout the game, when you finish some side quests, the NPCs will have an idea for a building, and if you've saved a certain amount of Kodamas and have the proper resources, you can construct the building. The Kodamas are one of the many things you can collect, and could be the most useless as I only built about 2 buildings in my playthrough. But the other collectibles aren't too crazy. We have Darumas and Oramoris. The game has 8 Darumas and each one has their own unique power to them, and you can use them while your tea kettle is filled. Personally, the Darumas were just okay. You can upgrade them all with Awakening Ink to enhance their powers, which is in Sakura City as well, but the Pyro Daruma was the only one I used consistently as it felt the strongest by far. I like the idea of Darumas, but felt they could have been executed a little bit better. Now, Orimoris felt a little more fleshed out to me. They're more simple as they're just a simple buff. You can equip these at any rest shrine and can equip up to 5 it looks like, but do need an Oromori strap for each one. Some of the buffs feel pretty useless, but doing side quests and finding secrets will help you unlock these, and the game has 32 of them to unlock. Those are the 3 main collectibles, but in Sakura City, you can still find a lot of useful upgrades that cost Kitsunebi, the main currency you get from killing enemies, and resources you find from each area. You can buff your tea kettle, your max HP, or even your weapon. Overall, the collectibles weren't too bad, just some of them felt a little useless. If you're trying to get all the achievements, you do want to get all of them, of course, and you can buy a lot of them with currency inside the game, but you'll find the ones that you find the most powerful and you'll probably stick to them. At the end of the day, Bow Path of the Teal Lotus is a very good Metroidvania, and I know a lot of people will see it and just say, Hollow Knight, but it stands out on its own. The combat and movement is fluid and satisfying. Collectibles could be better, but they don't diminish the experience. And I'll say the story may be the weakest part of the game, but even then, it's visually pleasing and not horrible. Just some NPCs feel useless, and some moments you think, what? Why? It's a game I was looking forward to, and I thoroughly enjoyed most of my time. But the worst thing is some of these achievements in the game. Who the hell wants to beat this entire game without dying? That's awful. But the game as a whole is great. Thanks for watching. An extra special shout out to the people that support me on Patreon still. That extra support really means the world, so just thank you for that. And yeah, that's all. I'll see you next time.